Good evening. I would like to call the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting to order. Today is Wednesday, May 10th, 2023. Time is 7 p.m. And we'd like to start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on the agenda is delegations. Delegations is where members of the public can address the Board of Finance on any of the items that are on the agenda this evening. Is there anyone who wanted to address anything on the agenda? No. Okay.
You're the public.
Next is the approval of minutes. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of the regular meeting from April 12th, 2023?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Anyone have any questions, changes, corrections? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the regular minutes from April 12th, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? The motion carries 6-0-0. Next is reports. First up, our first selectman, Mr. Siri.
Thank you, Denise. First, bring up to date on charter revision. It's coming to the point where it's going to be coming back to the Board of Selectmen and then eventually to the town. They're going to have their final preparation meeting on May 23rd to incorporate everything that they have gotten to so far, and that'll be followed up by a public hearing for the public on June 6th. That's a Tuesday, the first Tuesday in June. That was selected because they wanted to do Monday the 5th, but that would conflict with the Board of Ed meeting, so it's the 6th. And then they'll presenting the draft document to the Board of Selectmen on the 21st. We'll review it, and then the town attorney will tell us what our process is from that. But the same thing, we'll take a look at what they've done, we'll add our comments to it, and it'll be moved to the ballot in November. It'll be questions on the ballot. And exactly what will transpire from the 21st, the best thing to do is watch it or come to that meeting and see what town attorney says, because they have all the schedule from that point on. Some of the highlights, they're going to recommend first selectman and board of selectmen be 4-year terms commencing in 2 years from now, 2025. And the first election would be the 2025, be a staggered for the Board of Selectmen, so that every other year, every municipal election, half the board would be up for election. So only every 4 years would you have a first selectman candidate, if that were adopted. Also, if you fill a vacancy in an elected board, now it wouldn't be to the next election, it would be to the end of that term. If someone resigned now and their term ended in November, that's an easy, or December, that would be an easy one. But if it was 2 years down the road, they would not have to run again in November. They would fill out the remaining 2+ years or however long was left on that term. Regarding the town clerk and tax collector, they're going to recommend they become administrative hires, vice elected positions. And they'll detail their reasoning behind that when they present to the Board of Selectmen. For raise the amount required to go to a town meeting, and also omit things such as grants that would normally, that we get on a routine basis, don't have to come back for approval by the Board of Finance town meeting. Just come to the Board of Selectmen for that, because it's funds that were already allocated to us under a grant. And then if, right now they're planning, if the budget is 5% or greater, it would be an automatic referendum like we have now. If we're under 5%, it would not be. There's always the ability to petition if someone wants to go to that. So that's what they're thinking of bringing forward. Moving on, COVID emergency declaration ends tomorrow. So over the next month or so, by June 30th, the state-supported sites used for The testing and so forth will be phased out. You'll have to go through basically your home health or your health care coverage for that. Same thing with home test kits, vaccines and so forth are going to fall that way. And the way they report right now, they update every day. Now it'll go up to the normal updating, and you'd have to read what the governor said. That sort of that you can update on the flu status, all these other viruses and that, but it's going to fall something similar to that. Moving on to the Route 161, exit 74, construction is really picked up. If you can drive up that north end of town, you'll see it every day. They're working very hard, sometimes taking lanes, sometimes not. It may get a little bit worse on 161, but a lot of work will now start shifting to the night once school is out and so forth like that, digging up the road. You can see they're pushing back now. There's going to be a presentation here on the 22nd, strictly for business owners and managers, for businesses along the 161 corridor, Route 1 area that are affected by the construction. And that'll be at 6 p.m., but it'll be just for them, and it'll be a follow-up meeting probably a little later on for just residents. But this one is specific for them, so they can work out, bring their any concerns they have out and talk to the engineering firm and the contractor. The water tank has been painted. Pete, you probably, others in the north end of town have probably noticed, it's been painted. The good news is that we're $750,000 budgeted. The good news is that we're about $150,000 under right now. So it's going to cost $2,250 to put the Viking logo on there. I mean the scallop shell with East Lyme. So I think that's okay to do, well within budget. So that was some really good news for that. Moving on, Dominion Building. I'm still talking with. We used to have a direct contact. Now I'm dealing with the Dominion, the manager over at Dominion. We're still trying to set up a meeting. We'd like to be able to test before we take possession. They'd have to say yes to that. It's looking more like we'd have to take possession first, like I think I've mentioned before, and then we could do the testing. A lot more input from the community that they'd like to keep it, especially with the Playhouse there. And moving on to the Playhouse, they had their first production the weekend of the 27th, and then the first weekend in May. I know it was a sellout the first weekend because I wanted to go opening night, and I couldn't. I had to wait till Saturday night to get tickets. But good, it went very, very well. Lots of people, very positive reviews. And they're going to be doing in early June, Murder on the Orient Express, I think on the first week and second weekend of June. Coming up, the 29th, we'll start with the 28th. The 28th of May is the vigil at 7:30 for Memorial Day on the Green, 7:30, and then followed up by the Memorial Day Parade at 2 p.m. on Sunday, the 29th of May. Referendum, I don't need to tell you about that. You know it. You know when it is. It's a week from tomorrow, the 18th, from 8 to 8 at the community center, so we hope everyone gets out to vote. Dispatchers have ratified their new contract for 3 years. They have no steps in theirs. They got an extra PL day because they were lagging behind everybody else. They did that. The first year is 3%. The other two are 2.75 and 2.75. The reason for the first year, is because their working conditions have changed from what they did at the old dispatch center. They have to interact with the public now, which they never had to do before coming into the building, and they also have to monitor the cameras for the prisoners and so forth like that. And that's a change in working conditions. So that's why that first year they got a little boost to recognize that, but then drops back down right after that. Town hall hours. The week of July 10th, so July 10th will be the week it starts. They're going to be Monday through Thursday from 8 to 5, and then Friday from 8 to 11:30. So we're going to be closing at 11:30 on Fridays. We kind of looked at the traffic in here on Friday afternoons. It's almost non-existent throughout the course of the whole year. It's very quiet. Sometimes early in the morning you'll have a couple things. And we do get, people commenting, if you're only open a little later, I wouldn't have to leave work early. So we decided to be open till 5, Monday through Thursday. I talked to a couple of towns that are open till 6 and then close on Fridays, but they said from after 5, nobody comes in, so that's why we decided to do this. And that'll go into effect on the week of July 10th. And we're posting that all over on the doors when people come in, on the website, on the signboard, so we'll give everybody as much ample as, basically 2 months' notice of that. So, any questions? Thank you.
No, thank you very much. Next on the agenda is a report from the superintendent. He was unable to attend tonight. They're in the midst of final interviews with a potential hiring position, so he did. But he did just want to make sure everybody knew that graduation is June 15th, so anyone who wants to attend, obviously, is welcome. And then Director of Finance, Mr. Gervais.
All right. Okay. All right. So we're going to dive in here and give you an update on the finance office and some of our projects. So I figured we'd spend a few minutes on some projects we're working on in the finance office, update on the 21 single audits that are still not submitted, 22 audit update, and then 23, just where we're standing there as well. And then ongoing discussion, some of the funds we're looking to establish, some operating transfers. We're going to spend some time looking at the fund balance, and then spending a few minutes also on fiscal year 23. So every month I come before you guys and give you status updates. We're still in the same holding pattern for Munis. It looks like July 21-24, July 1st, 2024 for accounts payable and some of the general ledger things, and then January 1, 25 for payroll. Bond issuance, some other things we're working on in the finance office. We have until August 10th to go out to bond and roll the bond anticipation notes, otherwise known as bands, that we currently have right now. Those are due, so it's $5.9 million we owe. So we're going to look to roll some of that into bonds, and then also roll in the capital projects from this year. So, and we have a timeline. I'm working with bond counsel and our financial advisors. We're working on some resolutions, compiling the offering statement. So the offering statement's due to our financial advisor June 1st, and then we're going to clean that up. We have a ratings call in early July with Standard & Poor's. They're going to issue us a rating, and then we look to issue those bonds early August. So financial statement updates, 21. The financial statements are filed. We are wrapping up. We've finished the federal and state single audits, but that is in technical review. And if you remember, with the financial statements, technical review was over a month. So it's already been 2 weeks. So I'm trying to hold them to the end of the week, and every week it just kind of snowballs. So I'm hopeful for end of May. So, and I think that's realistic. It might be sooner than that, and I'll keep everyone apprised. Fiscal year 22, we had the auditors here Monday and Tuesday of this week. So we're diving into the next audit, and we hope to get that turned around in record time, so we can then start the 23 audit. So 23 will close in 2 months. So June 30, we start so we'll have another audit open. The train never stops. So I've met with department heads every quarter, monitoring their budget, where their challenges are, and working on transfers. So that's something that'll come to the Board of Selectmen first, then the Board of Finance to vote on moving money to cover some overages and underspends. And then just prioritizing projects that have a quick turnaround and we can fit in this year's budget. So we're working with Public Works on some issues, looking to rearrange some offices. So we're just looking at how we can utilize some available funds in the current year to push some of these projects over the finish line. And ongoing discussions just to keep these issues fresh in all of our minds. Establishing a grant fund. I'm working with our town attorney, Tracy Collins, on establishing a grant fund and also a harbor management fund. I think the grant fund's important. It would really help keep track of these grants for multi-year grants. And then the Harbor Management Fund, that's actually a state statute that's mandatory. We just haven't done it in the past. So we're going to be moving the revenues out of the general fund. That's why it was zero this year. It's $7,000 in the current year, but next year it's zero. That money has to be spent on harbor management related fees, and that has to be kept in a special revenue fund. So we're updating our compliance to meet the state compliance. Operating transfers, I just talked about that. So some accounts are over budget. We'll talk about that when we get to the fiscal year 23 budget update. Fund balance projection. Everyone should have a work paper. It's got two gray boxes. So just walking through the fund balance. I didn't have it on the screen. So everyone have this paper? All right. So I have two scenarios because I think it's important, and this is kind of a moving target, and we're looking at June 30, 24, right? So that's over 14 months out. A lot can happen between now and then. So I did a kind of a worst case scenario and then a more realistic scenario based on the past couple of years, right? So and there's a lot of estimation and projections here, all the way to fiscal year 23. That's estimated, and that's that's projected. So the only numbers really locked in is that first number, right? That very first number at the very top of the page. Everything else is unaudited. Okay, so it's my best I don't want to say guess because it's not a guess. Best calculations, right, of where I think we'll fall. So I think we talked about at the town meeting about 12.5%. I think that's truly worst case scenario. Best case scenario, over 13%. More realistically, right around 13%. That's where I foresee us in 1 year from now. So, and like it says right there, most realistic scenario, 500,000 between underspending and also taking in more revenues, right? So in the budget, we have 200,000 of contingency, in case anything unexpected. I won't jinx us with anything. So I remember how that worked out during the winter. So off the bat, if we don't touch that, that's 200,000. So really, we're trying to close the gap for another $300,000. And I think as we talk about, next slide, we'll talk about the fiscal year 23, where that is for revenues and expenditures, and how, I think that 500,000 is obtainable, between savings in certain departments and also bringing in more revenues. So let's dive in there. And then also, last one, fund balance policy. I've been talking with Denise about looking at, my favorite word, best practices. And GFOA really has a few, has the analytical template we worked through back in the fall, and also has a lot of literature on best practices. So we're trying to find a good template to use and update to East Lyme. So, 2023, there's a handout of revenues. We'll start there. It's just one page. So there should only be two. I have a separate one, so I can go through that. So just some ones I want to touch. Looking at ones that are over already 100%, expended or, we collected. Interest and liens in the current year. It's probably at the very back page there, in the back. Keep going, the very last page. Yep, there you go. All right, some ones I'd keep in my eye out. Anything on the very right columns, percent realized, anything over 100%, we're over budget there. And we want to be over budget on this page. This is the page we want over budget on.
So on that very first one, that is based upon the collection rate that we used in the budget, not the total amount of taxes due, right?
Correct. So that is the budgeted amount. So how can we collect over 100%? Because we're using that 98.2% collection rate. Now, don't forget, that line has the motor vehicle supplemental built in. So I'm expecting 500,000 of an overage there, right? So if it's not 500,000 over, to me, we didn't collect that 98.2%, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. So some accounts I want to highlight of how far they're over budget and, look good. Conveyance taxes for town clerk, budgeted 285. She's brought in 368, right? We have 2 more months. So that's really good there. Interest and liens, current year, that's, people that are, that didn't pay on time. $167,000 we've brought in, 125 was budgeted. And so people, so we have 2 more months of that, so that's trending in the right direction. And then, the big one, taxes, the current grand list, that is 150,000 over budget right now. And like I said, I expect that number to be 500,000 over budget. That's my target, right? And that'll put us in good shape for next year with the $500,000 motor vehicle supplemental. So the other big one, building permits, budgeted 455. It's not over budget, but building permits is kind of cyclical a little bit, and people don't do too many building permits in the winter. The spring really ramps that up, so we have 2 more months. That's really going to be sky high. I'm thinking that'll be over $500,000. And then let me see here if there's any other ones I want to talk about. Any questions? Those are the ones I wanted to mention. No questions there?
The town miscellaneous?
Town miscellaneous is like a catch-all. I'm not quite sure what's in there. It might be the insurance check. We get like an equity distribution from our insurance company. That might have been placed there. There's not really a good home for that. I need to look more into that. I know it's 3,000% over. I really liked that.
Yeah, the percentage looks great.
Yeah, I just think, I'm not realistic. I'm not sure how realistic that $2,000 is as a budget, or if that's just kind of like, hey, let's just stick 2,000 there. So I can look more into that.
So how about on the flip side, the things that we're worried about? I'm looking at the landfill deposits.
So the landfill deposits are down a little bit, and I think that has something to do with the transfer station being constructed, right? So I know that's been down for a little while. Other ones I wanted to touch base with, tuition. Looks like it's, so what I do is I'm looking for 83%. So this far in the budget, we're looking for 83% or better. So anything that's falling below 83% is kind of not a cause for concern, but hey, this is trending not in the right direction. So if it's in the between 75 and 80, that's fine. There's cyclicality to some of these. Like prime example, the fishing and game. It's only $200, but people aren't buying that in the winter time. Really, they're buying that in the springtime. Mooring fees too, same thing. And to be honest with you, where's that mooring fees, Kev? 7,000, 7,000.
Right above the fishing game.
So that'll be 0. We're gonna have to zero that out. We're transferring that into that harbor management fund. So we didn't do that yet. I'm just gonna wait till year end, and we're gonna move the money over. And the one, prior year grand list is down. It's 81%, not 83. That's because we had the tax sale a couple years ago. There was not as much interest to collect because there's not as much outstanding taxes. So, that's reasonable. So, any other questions? We can go to expenses. All right. So on the expense side, a few accounts we're dealing with some budgetary challenges, but nothing we can't handle and absorb in the budget. We're looking to do, I've said this last meeting, I was looking to break out the salary contingency and post that to the appropriate lines, right? So you see a lot of salaries, like the very first one is 88% expended. That's not accurate. The number doesn't reflect the increase, the GWI increase, employees got for 7/1, right? So police overtime, there was a few sergeants that have been, a few police officers that have been out on leave. So we know the...
And don't say leave, because leave would indicate...
Disability.
So what do we,
leave means you just...
they're not there?
Leave through...
I gotcha.
So that just means you're on vacation. Remember, Sandy?
So whatever we want to say for the police. The regular salary line is under by about $100,000. So we think that'll cover the majority of that. And I've been monitoring this account almost weekly to see where overtime is falling. And in the last couple weeks, the overtime has been dropping pretty substantially. First selectman part-time clerical is a little high. there's some help in the First Selectman's office there. Flanders Fire, the regular salary line is under budget, part-time is over. I believe there is an individual on military leave in that fire department, so they're covering that position with part-time salaries. The registrars is over budget. We've talked about this almost every meeting. So we're going to be doing a transfer there. There's $7,500 we had to move into that account for them so they can issue purchase orders for the referendum. So I had to preemptively move some money into that account. So I know about that. That'll be coming to you guys next month. But they have to put these purchase orders in to get the ballots and things like that. So we really couldn't wait on that particular item. Finance, overtime, miscellaneous supplies were expended. That I got a couple new screens in my office and a new desk. So that's on me. Legal expenses, we're monitoring those as well. And we're just, as we wrap up the year, we're just tightening things up. So, expense side, I think we're in pretty good shape. We haven't touched the retirement liabilities has $200,000 in it. The contingency we have not touched. That's where, if you go back to the fund balance projection here, you'll see for this current year, the current year effect on fund balance is $539,000. So take into account that $539,000 is really $1.8 million because we're not touching the $1.3 million use of fund balance, right? So if we spent every dollar we had that, and we brought in $1 million more in revenue, that would be negative $300,000 still because we're starting in the hole. We started, our revenues took into account $1.3 million of use of fund balance. So having $500,000 positive was pretty impressive for fiscal year 23. So, we have 2 months, but knock on wood, that was really good. So that's all I have.
So is there any area where, there's real concern or a freeze in place?
I wouldn't say freeze on anything. We can't, police have to continue operating. The First Selectman's part-time clerical is going away next week. The Flanders regular time is covering the over for part. It's literally a wash. If you look at the subtotal of the salaries, it's right there, 83%. The registrars is the only real one, but again, we have to have that referendum. And then the finance office, next month the deputy finance director starts. Next Monday, the 15th, she starts. So I think that'll help out with the overtime. So the AR clerk and the payroll clerk and the AP clerk will have a little more support there during the day to make sure things are done more timely. That's probably not going to help the miscellaneous supplies account in the finance office, having another person there, but we'll cross that bridge next meeting. So I think, do you have anything to add?
Anyone have questions for Kevin?
Do you have enough room in there for everybody?
So the engineering department has kindly drawn up a schematic, or whatever the word is, for the accounts receivable office behind my office.
Okay.
So Mr. Birmingham was in the finance office the other day, and I said, do you want to come take a look at the other office? And he didn't even know there was one back there.
Yeah.
So there's an
Wow.
office behind my office.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we, and that's housed 2 people before. So it just needs a little help from the engineering department. So we're gonna. That's our plan for the next 2 days, Thursday and Friday, to get that office converted to a 2-person office. So.
Other questions for? All right, so new business audit update, which I think you kind of already covered that
Yep.
in your presentation. Unfinished business, next item on the agenda is the fund balance policy. I know we've had this on the agenda, just trying to keep it in the forefront. We have a policy that I think was last updated many years ago, 2008 maybe. And, yep. And so that policy calls, for 10% undesignated fund balance. We went through the exercise that we had from GFOA to say what would best practices for a town with our particular makeup and geographical and all that. And that called for, what was it, 16?
16 is the base. I think it called for
Yeah.
over 20.
Yeah.
I think it was 21, 22% it called for.
We looked at a number of towns. Everyone is all over the place. We were I had it in my head that we got to 15. I didn't want to drop, but clearly we're trying to do the best we can for our residents and their situation and help to alleviate their tax burden. And I mentioned, to Kevin the other day that I feel like we're trying to take the existing one and tweak it, whereas since that one came out, there's been other GASB information, GASB 54. And it might just be easier to go back and, just throw out the old one, start with one of the templates that either CCM or GFOA has that already incorporates all of that. And then, obviously, since we're not looking at 15, it may make sense to have a range in there that we would target. But I would like to kind of get something wrapped up that we could, show to the Board of Selectmen and say this is something that we would recommend. So
Okay.
I don't know whether anyone's had a chance to kind of delve into any of the policies that are out there, or have any suggestions that they want to.
No, it's been a while since I looked at it, but
Yeah.
What I can do is, I can, I'll work with you to find 3 good ones, right? And I could send them to everybody, and then we can talk about it at the next meeting and pick the best one, and then work to refine that. Does that sound good? And then we can, so we could bring it to the Board of Selectmen for July, right? So in June, or?
You'd bring it.
Okay.
You would bring it to us in August, because we only have one meeting, and it'd be the 5th of July. Our next meeting is in August. And as much as I'd like to have another one to discuss this in May, July, I don't think we'll do that.
Okay. So that gives us enough time to really dive in and get a good one. So, okay. Like that.
Sounds good. Okay. Next is public discussion. This is where the public can address the Board of Finance on anything that comes under the purview of the Board of Finance. You good? Okay.
You're the public.
Yes. Next, board comments. Richard?
Yes. I was wondering if there's been any follow-up with Mr. McGraw in terms of the traffic calming and the Board of Selectmen for those funds and planned use for this next year?
The money is planned to be used for traffic calming for next
Oh,
year.
okay.
So, I'm sorry. You did ask me that, and I forgot to answer that. I'm sorry.
Well, I would just say, let's hope everyone gets out and votes on May 18th for the budget referendum, because we don't want to do this all over again. All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
so moved. Second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 6-0.
For doing.